The T-44 tank, born during World War II, symbolizes the Soviet Union's quest for tank supremacy. It was initially meant as an upgrade to the T-34, featuring revolutionizing innovations and facing challenges along the way. With its engine placed sideways and a redesigned turret for better balance and firepower, the T-44 had improved armor and mobility. Despite successful trials against German Panther tanks, production and use were limited because the more advanced T-54 series emerged. Although the T-44 never fought in Europe, its legacy lives on as a crucial step towards the iconic T-54 tank, influencing future Soviet tank development. Its story showcases Soviet engineering prowess during wartime challenges and technological progress. And that story is what we're gonna talk about today. Hello and welcome to the Bobi and Tanks YouTube channel, and enjoy this video. History. The design process of the T-44 was long, laborious, and goes as far back as 1940, when the T-34 production had only just started. As production of the T-34 began, Soviet engineers, fueled by nothing but vodka, already had plans to improve its reliability and capabilities by using modern technology. This design project was called the T-34M. It was made with the intention of having greater cross-country performance and more effective armor. It featured better armor protection, a 3-man turret, and a different suspension system. It also had road wheels with internal shock absorption, increased fuel capacity, and more ammo storage to ensure that even when it blew up, it would really blow up. Unlike its predecessor, it could carry 100 rounds of hollow Fritz anti-German ammunition instead of just 77. The T-34M had 6 smaller wheels and 4 return rollers for its suspension. The original 500 horsepower V2 12-cylinder diesel engine was replaced with a new 12-cylinder diesel engine producing 600 horsepower. It also had a new 8-speed transmission system, and this was the first tank designed to feature a traverse engine placement, making it smaller than a standard T-34 and providing more space for the crew. Unfortunately for the Soviets, work on the T-34M stopped in early 1941 because the production facilities were overwhelmed with mass production of the T-34. When the war with the good old Germany began, the only practical solution was to gradually improve the existing T-34 design. Developing a new tank would slow down production, and slowing down was not an option when you're trying to outproduce your enemy with sheer quantity and, well, questionable quality. So the last thing the Red Army needed was another shiny prototype when they were knee-deep in an actual war. As the Eastern Front became a hellscape of mud, blood, and despair, the Red Army realized they needed a new medium tank with better protection but minimal weight increase. In 1942, the T-43 tank design project began. It had a new turret and shorter suspension, reducing the clearance between the road wheels. However, the T-43 focused on increasing armor, but at the time maintaining production and boosting firepower were more important than armor. The T-43 was therefore scrapped, but its turret still found use and was fitted with a larger 85mm gun, with the D5T first and then the TIS S-53. This new turret and cannon was fitted to the new T-34-85 variant. This marked the end of the T-34 improvements, as fitting 100mm guns in T-34-100 prototypes proved unfeasible. And thus, the saga of the T-34 design was littered with brilliant ideas, crushing realities, and a lot of Soviet ingenuity, which is just a polite way of saying they tried really hard and sometimes it even worked. Prototypes. The dawn of T-44 madness. Let's start with the first generation of prototypes. In the autumn of 1943, the design bureau of the Stalin Ural Tank Factory No. 183 in Nizhny Tagil started working on a new vehicle with future improvement potential, following a direct order from Joseph Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union at that time. The mission was simple: keep the T-34's high mobility but slap on heavier armor to withstand modern guns. In November 1943, the Soviet chief designer Morozov presented the overall design and a model of the tank, which was designated as the T-44 with the typical Soviet prototype name Object 136. The first prototype was completed by January 1944 and 2 more were finished in February. The first prototypes armed with 85mm D5T guns were designated T-44-85. The third prototype, armed with a 122mm D25-44T tank gun, was designated T-44-122. The D-25-44T tank gun featured fixed single-piece ammunition for a higher rate of fire and a double-baffle muzzle brake. Its penetration performance was inconsistent due to issues with the shell powder. The T-44's innovative hull design, with the engine placed vertically to the tank's axis and without sponsons, allowed for a larger crew compartment and central turret placement. This genius move enabled it to fit more powerful armament in a 30-ton medium tank. It was the first ever tank to have a vertically placed engine. The T-44 had 75mm front hull armor, 90mm front turret armor and 45mm side armor, with an option for 30mm additional side armor. It was powered by a 500 horsepower V2IS diesel engine and featured a raised cast driver's hatch with a vision flap and mounting bolts around the gun tube base. The driver probably had the best seat in the tank, assuming he survived long enough to enjoy it. Morozov's new medium tank design was met with skepticism. Critics believed that placing a high-speed 12-cylinder engine with a displacement of nearly 40 liters vertically to the direction of travel would cause issues such as breaking the connection rods. They also thought that reducing the engine compartment size to enlarge the fighting compartment was unnecessary and that moving the turret rearwards would limit the main gun's elevation and depression angle. Let's face it, Soviet gun elevation and depression angles were already a sad story. Depressingly so, one might say. And the worst thing is, they still are. Looking at the rotated engine, it turned out that despite it complicating the transmission with an additional reduction gear and fan drive, it also solved many problems. The engine and transmission cover along with the radiator could be turned for easier access to the engine, transmission and batteries. Shortening the engine compartment allowed the turret to be moved rearward, aligning its rotation axis and center of mass with the center of the hull. This improved the main gun's accuracy and reduced the chance of the turret getting stuck if hit. It also improved the handling characteristics due to the more central center of gravity. Another advantage was that the cannon could no longer hit the ground when driving downhill. Always a plus. The frontal armor thickness could be more than doubled without upsetting the center of mass or significantly increasing the tank's weight. At the beginning of World War II, the T-34's armor was considered sufficient. During the war, improvements included increasing the gun caliber from 76.2mm to 85mm and thickening the turret armor with no significant changes to the hull. Now let's look at the second generation of prototypes. The first trials of the T-44 122 prototype with the 122mm gun I mentioned earlier were conducted in February and March 1944, but faced issues when the gun malfunctioned, requiring it to be sent back to the factory to be repaired. Trials resumed in April and May 1944. In addition to the standard test, the T-44 122 was compared in trials against a captured German Panther tank and another T-44-85 prototype. The practical rate of fire was limited to 2 to 3 rounds per minute due to the cramped turret and heavy, long ammunition. The tank could only store 24 rounds, which was deemed insufficient for a medium tank. Consequently, further development of the T-44 122 prototype was cancelled. Although I think a 122mm gun would have still been pretty cool on a T-44, but whatever. 2 original T-44-85 prototypes were tested against a captured German Panther tank, with one also facing off against the T-44 122 prototype. These tests revealed design flaws leading to the development of second-generation prototypes by May 1944. The new versions moved the driver's position backwards and redesigned the vision flaps on the front plate. These prototypes differed in details like whether they had a splashboard on the front plate and variations in the gun tube base colors. One of these newer prototypes weighed 31.3 tons and was armed with an 85mm CIS S-53 gun. It underwent successful trials at the NIBT Proving Grounds, where the front turret armor was increased to 115mm and whole side armor to 75mm. Variants. Let's discuss the different variants, starting with the T-44A. Developed by Morozov Design Bureau in Kharkiv, Ukraine as a third-generation prototype, the T-44A featured upgraded armor with a 90mm front plate and 120mm turret front. Despite this, its weight decreased to 30.7 tons, which is impressive given how much Soviet designers loved adding more steel to everything. It was powered by a new V-44 diesel engine producing 520 horsepower, allowing it to reach speeds up to 60.5 km an hour. This prototype kept the splashboard on the front plate seen in earlier versions but introduced other changes. For instance, the driver's hatch was moved to the hull roof, making it easier to access or escape from. The vision flat on the front plate was replaced with a slot, presumably to give the driver a clearer view of the chaos outside. After successful trials in August and September 1944 and subsequent upgrades that increased its weight to 32 tons, the T-44A was officially adopted by the Red Army on November 23, 1944. However, it did not see combat during World War II. Now let's look at the T-44-100 and how it became the starting point for the AK-47 of Soviet tanks, the T-54. Despite its advanced technology and improved armor, the T-44A still used the same 85mm gun found on the T-54-85 medium tank. By late 1944, the military required a tank with a more potent 100mm gun. Designers had three options: the D-10, which was a proven gun in the Su-100 tank destroyer, and prototypes of the Cis-100 and LB-1. The T-44 tank armed with the 100mm gun started as the T-44B. Two projects began based on the T-44A. The first, initiated in October 1944, completed its design stage by December and had a prototype ready by February 1945. Trials from March to April were successful, leading to its adoption by the Red Army as the T-54. It shared much of the hull and drivetrain with the T-44A, but featured thicker front armor and redesigned driver's hatch and vision slot. The turret was larger with increased armor. Armament included the 100mm D-10TK gun and two 7.62mm GWT machine guns. It used a new V-54 diesel engine producing 520 horsepower with expanded fuel capacity and wider rubber rollers on the road wheels. Weighing 35.5 tons, it reached a top speed of 43.5 km an hour and had a range of 360 km. As the T-54 showed so much promise, further development of the T-44 was halted and attention turned solely to refining and mass-producing the T-54 main battle tank. Thus, the T-44 legacy was solidified not through its own battlefield exploits but as a crucial stepping stone to one of the most iconic tanks in military history. Now let's look at the T-44 tank itself. The T-44. The T-44 had a typical tank layout, with the driver at the front, the crew in the middle and the engine at the rear. Unlike older tank designs, the T-44 did not include a radio operator or machine gunner position. This decision was made for several reasons. The large machine gun port in the glacis plate, which was present in the T-34, was a weak spot in the armor and exploited by German forces during World War II. The machine gun itself was ineffective due to bad vision. Therefore, communication duties were transferred to the commander to streamline operations. The space saved by eliminating the machine gunner position was used for additional fuel storage and increased ammunition capacity. The T-44 had sloped front armor, vertical sides and a slightly angled rear. Most tanks included a splashboard on the glacis plate to protect against mud and water splashes. A lot of people ask themselves what this piece of steel is there for, and now you have the answer. The T-44 was equipped with a V-44 diesel engine, a more powerful version of the T-34's V2 model. With this new engine, the T-44 could reach a top speed of 53 km an hour on roads, 20 to 25 km an hour off-road, and it had a maximum range of 350 km on roads before running out of fuel. However, the engine's durability was limited, typically becoming worn after the tank traveled about 3,000 km. The T-44A was equipped with an 85mm Cis S-53 tank gun and two 7.62mm DTM light machine guns, one of which was operated by the driver. The main gun was installed in a centrally placed turret alongside a coaxial-mounted 7.62mm DTM machine gun. The Cis S-53 could penetrate about 100mm of armor at a range of 1,000 meters. The gun had an elevation range of -5 degrees to +25 degrees, but it was not stabilized. Like in the T-34, cartridge cases would roll around the crew compartment and gases from the guns would fill the interior after each shot, gassing the crew just like the Anyways, The T-44A carried 58 rounds for the main gun and 1,890 rounds for the machine guns. Production history. The T-44A officially entered service with the Red Army on November 23, 1944, with production starting in October. The tanks were built in Kharkiv, in Ukraine. Initial ambitions were high, with plans to build out 300 T-44As per month, but only 25 were built by the end of 1944. In 1945, as the war ended, production ramped up to 940 tanks, making a total of 965 tanks built during the war. An additional 858 T-44As were produced in 1946 to 1947, totaling 1,823 tanks. The production run was short, ending in 1947 due to several factors: mechanical issues, the end of the war reducing the need for new tanks, and the design's inability to mount a 100mm gun. The T-44A was replaced by the more reliable T-54, one main battle tank which could mount a 100mm gun. The T-54-2 later replaced the T-34 production at the Omsk factory number 183 in 1950. The T-54-55 series remained in production until 1981. Combat history. The T-44 was issued to 3 tank brigades on September 15, 1944 for training. However, these brigades were re-equipped with T-34-85 tanks before taking part in the Battle of Berlin and the Prague Offensive. The T-44A wasn't used in combat in Europe during World War II for several reasons. The Red Army wasn't ready to accept a new tank. There were not enough spare parts and technical specialists to maintain them, and many tank crews would have to be retrained. However, in a seemingly desperate bid for relevance, 3 T-44A tanks were sent to the 100th Special Tank Company and tested on the Eastern Front. Many T-44As were also sent to the far east of the Soviet Union right after production. The first tanks arrived before the war ended and were used in the last 3 days of fighting. Eventually, around 600 T-44As were stationed there, where they probably spent more time battling mosquitoes than enemy tanks. Due to the Cold War, the USSR decided to keep the existence of the T-44 tank a secret. It was never shown in military parades or publicly released in photos until the secrecy was lifted. There is almost no photographic evidence of T-44s stationed in East Germany or used in Poland and Romania for training tank crews in 1952 or during the Soviet invasion of Hungary in 1956. However, it is known that T-44 tanks were sent to these places, but only a few known photographs of the T-44A tanks in Hungary exist. The T-44 never saw any actual combat except in War Thunder. However, it participated in several movies such as Father of a Soldier, Liberation, Battle of Moscow, Red Cherry, The Star, and Downfall. Units of the T-44 also reside in a few museums. One last thing I want to mention, which I think is pretty cool, is that Gaijin Entertainment, the dominant snail which created War Thunder, fully restored the T-44 tank number 721 in cooperation with the Kubinka Tank Museum. It achieved full operating condition over the course of nearly 6 months, and given a parade paint scheme in the style of the T-44 Znamensky tank from the 29th Tank Corps of the 5th Tank Guards Mechanized Army. If you want to see more of the Gaijin T-44 tank restoration, I will put the link to the website in the description, and there you will find pictures as well as a 4-part documentary on the restoration. Anyways, that was all I had to say for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you think I said anything that is not right, or you think I should have added any additional information to this video, please let me know in the comments and share your knowledge. Besides that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
It feels like I was actually there. It is so realistic. I'm also very happy, all the more so because the T-44 is one of my favorite tanks, so it's really great to see it.